Good day, I'm Tricia White, and we are at GK Johnson Studios today, and we're going to be talking with Greg Johnson. He's an Edmonton-based photographer who has been in the photography industry for 5 years. Nice to see you, Greg. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Trish. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So I know COVID has affected everyone in multiple ways. And I'm curious as to how your business has been affected by the recent pandemic.
It's been affected in a couple of different ways. I think definitely on a personal level, the main thing that I've wanted to do with all of the clients that I've had coming in here is making sure that their health and safety is the number one priority. Now, having said that, I've made some changes to my business, which has actually affected my bottom line. I'm not bringing in as many people to the studio, but that's okay, right? That's something that I think is benefiting the whole community in general. But it has affected predominantly my studio rental side of my business, because there's multi areas that I'm in as a photographer. The studio rental has probably been the biggest one that's taken the hit. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that for a number of months, people just weren't able to go anywhere.
Well, for quite a while, according to provincial guidelines and health guidelines, you actually weren't allowed to shoot, were you?
That's right, yeah. And I actually extended it beyond that. So I did a lot of research with Alberta Health and Safety. I actually got in touch with the people that looked after the photography side. And when they told me that I was clear to be able to open my studio on a limited basis, even then I decided I wanted to wait. I wanted to put in specific safety protocols for people that were coming back. And I knew full well that there were going to be some people that either wanted to wait and come back, or they weren't going to come back. And that's perfectly fine, right? That's their choice, and I never hold that against people.
Well, and I think even when you look outside of the studio rental, you as a photographer have also had to do some changes.
I have. So lately, I am a certified professional in portraiture. I've gone to school for portrait photography, and it's the one area that I specialize in more than others. But I'm also a big believer that photographers can do more than just one type of photography. So I've actually expanded a little bit and gone back to doing some of the things that I did when I first started. So I've done a lot more nature photography outside. I can socially distance a little bit more, which has been really good because I've started to explore areas of photography that I haven't dealt in as much as I would like to. And it's kind of rebirthed a creative juice in me. So I'm now looking more at macro photography. I'm looking at how natural light falls on subjects outside. I'm looking at some subjects that people may not think are subjects, right? And how we can look at them differently as a visual medium. So it's really that in that way, COVID's actually benefited my creative side, because I'm looking at different creative ways in order to produce interesting and dynamic images.
Well, and I think you're probably not the only person in across all industries who has not only found that COVID has pushed them to new limitations, but also has helped them find new ways of doing the same things that they were doing before, but in a different way.
That's very true. That's very true. One of the things that I've worked on while we've had the shutdown, because part of the reason that I shut everything down was my children were out of school, so I had to stay home with them. But I didn't use it as downtime and idle time. I wanted to continue to find ways to either improve myself, improve my business model, improve my creative side with photography. And so a couple of things that I started looking at was curating photos. How do you put photos together in such a way that they make an interesting story? One photo is great. You can tell a story with one photo. But if you have 10 photographs put together, there is a specific way. If you put them one after another, you're going to tell a story. And your viewers, the people that are seeing your work, are going to interpret that story. And then hopefully they interpret it the way that you intend them to. But if they don't, sometimes that's also good, because you get feedback on things that maybe you wouldn't have originally thought. So I've put a lot of work into that side, on the creative side, curating galleries, putting together galleries. And then I've also done a little bit more on some editing side, and I've actually freelanced some editing out to kind of supplement some of the lost income from the studio rental. And then I've also done a lot of stock photography lately.
Oh.
So I've been taking images around the province, and then I've been putting them on stock websites, which has also supplemented my revenue a little bit.
Are those any of those creative ways that you've managed to work around COVID? Are any of those things that you think you would have touched on had this not happened?
The stock photography element is something that I've thought about for a while, and it's an interesting one because the stock photography sites are massive sites. They're places that get millions of viewers per day that are buying either licensed or they're buying per image prices. Sometimes they're not super expensive, but you can sell more in volume. But it's a highly, highly competitive market because not only are there millions of viewers, but there's also several 100,000 images that are uploaded at a time. So you're competing against all of that. But if you find the right element, if you find the images that people are looking for, if you do a little bit of market research and say, what are the trends? What are people looking for? What do they want to have on their marketing sites? Because that's usually what stock photography is used for, right? It's for marketing your brand or your website, whether it's a clothing site or it's a business site or you're selling a service or a product. You want to have those images to really boost up your brand. And so if you can identify the things that people are looking for those sites, then you can actually make a good amount of money doing it. Now you need to shoot in volume for that. And that's something that I've kind of put on the back burner a little bit just because I've got a couple of other things that I've been working on. But this downtime has actually given me the opportunity to kind of explore that side of the business that I was eventually going to get to. It's just kind of sped up my timeline a little bit.
Absolutely. So what have you had to incorporate specifically into your studio shoots to make sure that you are following safety guidelines?
Well, especially with the new legislation from the city, the bylaw that came out now, masks are required for anybody entering into the studio. So any photographers or models, any assistants, everybody is required to wear a mask while they're doing the setup, while they're doing the teardown, while everything is being put into place. People are required to keep their masks on while they're in the studio. Obviously, the model will take their masks off before they do their shoot. I'm also fortunate enough with the size of my space and the creative aspect of our spaces that you can maintain a minimum of 6 foot distance. So we do have 3 rooms in the studio that you can shoot in, but we try to keep the props and equipment to a minimum so that you can be creative in your sets. You're not limited to doing just what I set up for you, right? Whatever you want to move. If there's something in another room you want to bring it in, create your own set, create your own visual experience. And because we're able to do that, we have a lot of room in the studio that you're able to move around in and not have to worry about shortening that 6 foot gap. So that's the first thing. The masks are definitely one. I have a hard and fast rule is I ask everyone, I appreciate the hand sanitizer is a good thing, but I've got access to washrooms. If people come in, just simply wash your hands before you get started, right? A lot of times I've had people say, you know what, it's kind of a good way to just get rid of a little bit of energy, right? If it's somebody that I haven't worked with, or if it's a photographer and a model that haven't worked together, right? The men's and women's bathroom are down the hall, they wash their hands, they take a second, they come in, and you almost see a bit of an energy uplift afterwards, which is really interesting. And I think that actually helps the dynamic of the photographer and the model working together. And you see some pretty creative images come out of it, which is really good. And then the other thing too is between shoots, I wipe everything down. So I spend at least 15 minutes to half an hour cleaning all touch surfaces, cleaning all lighting stands, cleaning all photography equipment, anything that people come in contact with, mirrors, doorknobs, the entire studio gets wiped down. What I used to do is I would probably book anywhere from 1 to 4 sessions in a day for studio rental, depending on the time. So what I've done now with COVID is I've actually cut it down to 2, no matter what time block people are using. So for instance, a popular time slot is usually a 2-hour time slot for people, right? They find that they can get a lot of work done in that. What I used to do in the past is I do 4 2-hour slots in a day. Now what I'm doing is I'll do 1 2-hour slot in the morning and 1 in the afternoon and clean in between, just to make sure that everything is safe and secure for people when they are coming into the studio.
That's fantastic. And I know there is a lot of work involved in making sure that it's safe, especially because you have new and different people coming in all the time. It's not the same people who are using the studio all the time. So beyond that, what have you done in regards to safety aspects for making sure that people aren't sick?
So I do on my website, and I spend a lot of time communicating with clients through social media now, which is actually not something that I thought that I would do. It's actually client driven, which is very interesting to me. So through Facebook and Instagram, when I do book appointments or when people book appointments through me, I have a list and I say, okay, here are the things. If you're not feeling well, please don't come. One of the other things that I've done on the rental side is that if people are unable to attend because they are feeling ill, they get a refund immediately, right? There's no questions asked. If they want to rebook, that's fine. I'm more than happy to help work in that area. But I'm not concerned if people, even at a last minute, say, "Look, I'm not feeling well. You know, I've got a bit of a fever. I think I should stay away." That's perfectly fine. That shows that they have everybody's best interest in mind, not only theirs, but they're respecting the time in the studio. They're respecting the other person that might be coming to the studio. They're respecting the families of those people and their interactions. And so I can't think of anything else that I could do besides, you know what, yeah, you get your money back for that. I have no problem. If you want to rebook, great. If not, that's okay too, right? But
well, I know the culture, whether it be in a place like this or other workplaces, has really changed since COVID. Whereas once it was, unless you're dead, you need to show up, or for instance, last minute cancellations, no refund. The culture on that has really changed due to the fact that it does involve everybody. Yeah. Nobody is immune to this at this current stage. So seeing how that has changed how you've worked your business model is really interesting. What else have you learned from just modern day pandemic?
Well, you know, it's interesting, this whole process, the whole pandemic in general has really opened my eyes to the importance of community. It was neat to see how people came together, right? It's so easy for us to get caught up in the rat race when I call it the traditional way we did things, because I think if things change and they do go back somewhat to the way they used to be, I don't think they're fully going to go back to the way that they used to be. And I think people have realized that maybe the way that we were doing things wasn't the best way to do it anyway. And so I think we're going to see a slight attitude and cultural shift, right? Maybe we're not going to be so focused on working 60 hours a week. You know, maybe we're going to say, I can work from home. I made it work. I can spend more time with my family.
I know that's one thing that, and you mentioned family earlier.
Yes, yeah.
That is one thing that I know on a personal level as well has changed for me, is the amount of time that I'm able to spend with my family rather than work. I think this has put a little bit more into perspective of how we spend our time.
I couldn't agree more. I think that you hit the nail right on the head. One of the best things that's happened to me in this time frame is I have two boys. They're 11 and 9, and my oldest one has taken a real interest in photography. And so now I've actually found that I have the time to show him how I do things, you know, some basic elements to it, how certain things work, why I do things the way I do. And he has his own camera now, and he comes with me and we'll go for walks in the evening, and he takes pictures and he says, well, I don't know if I like this. And so he's learned a little bit about that, and it's a great family bonding time for us as well, which is something that's been really great. And I didn't have that opportunity while the business was running.
Absolutely. I can definitely see how that would work. Well, thank you so much for your perspective on the recent COVID pandemic. I wish you absolute success in the future, and I'm sure we will talk to you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you so much. That was Greg Johnson from GK Johnson Studios.